Welcome, and thank you all very much for joining us. Tomorrow, we are going to be celebrating the life and work of one of the great Americans in the modern history of our country, and that is Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And I am so proud that we have with us today three knowledgeable people who have lived Dr. King's dream, who have struggled for his struggle, and know a lot about his life. And what we're going to do is just simply have an informal discussion about what Dr. King's work and life means for us today in the year 2016. So I'm really delighted to have with us Dr. Cornel West, who in fact has just recently published the book on the life of Dr. King. Killer Mike, who is reaching out to young people all across this country in an extraordinary way. And Senator Nina Turner, whose life has embraced much of what Dr. King has fought for. So we're just delighted to have all of you here. Dr. West, do you want to begin the discussion?
Yeah, one, of course, anytime we talk about Martin Luther King Jr., we recognize the degree to which he makes us shake and tremble. But the important thing is he's not an isolated icon. He's not just a figure in a museum. He's part of a very rich tradition. A tradition of a people who've been terrorized, traumatized, and stigmatized for 400 years, but still keep dishing out unbelievable courage and vision, and most importantly, love and justice. We're sitting at the church today, Mother Emanuel Church, and we're reading the words of Martin Luther King Jr. It just made you shake and quiver. And I said to myself, this is what the Sanders campaign is about.
Right. That's right.
Let's turn right after. This is what it's about.
That's right.
It's about the poor, working people.
Yeah.
It's about keeping track of the weak and the vulnerable. It's about mustering the courage to tell the truth about Wall Street, about wealth inequality, about decrepit schools, the need for jobs with a living wage. And I think Brother Martin Luther King Jr., he was local in his activism. He was global in his vision. But most importantly, he loved us enough to die for us.
Amen.
Okay. Mike, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I know people on the other side of the camera like, why in the hell is a rapper sitting there with a U.S. Senator, one of the most notable scholars of our time, with two U.S. Senators? I am Michael Render. That's what my mom named me. Killer Mike is what my dumb friends call me in a rap battle once, and it stuck. I have been mentored directly by Andrew Young, Joseph Lowry, Ralph David Abernathy III, and others that were directly involved with Dr. King. I've been organizing actively in Atlanta since I was 15 years old. My grandmother was an organizer and a marcher with Dr. King. She grew up in Tuskegee, Alabama. We have been sold a load of crock.
Yeah.
We have been given a pretty little compartment to put Dr. King in that says, no matter how much you hurt, no matter how much we stigmatize you, no matter how much we traumatize you, we beat you, you're as radical as you can go as nonviolence, and that's about where it is. Yeah. It never talks about the social justice aspect of Dr. King. Right. Alice Johnson was a white woman and my mentor from Chicago. She was the first person to introduce me to the radically different ideas of King that directly challenged establishment. They challenged the military-industrial complex. They challenged this country to feed and take care of its poor and its mentally ill in a different way. Challenged us to step and stand on the side of unions and between disputes between bosses or companies and workers. And I had never heard that. I just had heard in school, be nonviolent. It was all about desegregation. It absolutely was not only about desegregation. If he would have done that and that only, he would have been alive today. He was killed for many of the same reasons this man is campaigning for.
That's right.
He was killed because he spoke against the military-industrial complex. He was killed because he believed in the fairness and equity of all men. He was killed because he had the courage to say it and he had the courage to demand it out of corporations. And it's for that reason, when I saw you tweet, you were going to shoot for the restoration of the Voters' Rights Act, I knew I had met the real deal. And everything you've shown me since then has been in that line. And that's why you have a guy named Killer Mike sitting next to you talking about the most nonviolent warrior my race has ever created.
Mike, thank you very much. Senator Turner.
Amen to that. I just want to amen everything that has been said by Dr. West, Killer Mike, and Senator Sanders, too, sitting in Mother Emanuel. I mean, even the pastor's sermon was preaching your gospel. Dr. King, one of the last things he did in his life was the poor people's movement.
Absolutely.
That's right.
And people don't want to talk about that. He went to Memphis with the striking garbage workers, for the least of these. And Micah 6 and 8 comes to mind, Dr. West. What does the Lord require of you? And we have so many people who talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk.
Absolutely.
And when they are in halls of power, they get afraid to speak up for the poor and the disenfranchised. One of the things the pastor talked about this morning, he said, we hear a whole bunch of people talking about the middle class, but ain't nobody talking about the poor.
Absolutely.
Dr. West and I, we nudged each other. I said, we know one who's talking about the poor.
That's right.
And it's in an unashamed way. And so when we talk about how Senator Sanders has encapsulated, he's one of many other voices that are out there, but he is using his political cachet. However, titles are good, but purpose is better.
Absolutely.
And Senator Sanders is living his purpose, and he's using that title to shine a light in the same way that Dr. King used his title. His ascendancy was not just for himself, but it was for the people who did not have a voice. And so when we think about Dr. King and his movement, he had nonviolent resistance, but the key word is resistance. And he resisted for the good of the people.
But let me concur with what's been said. And let me tell you what kind of blew me away when you think about Dr. King's life. Obviously, it took an enormous amount of courage to stand up to the segregationists and the racists, to get jailed, to get beaten up. Incredible amount of courage. But what impressed me even more, I think Mike made this point, he could have rested on his laurels, right? The establishment would have said, you are a great black leader. Look what you did. You got the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah.
Wow. You broke down segregation in the South.
Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. But you know what? This is what courage is about. He said, ain't enough. If he's going to be consistent with his own inner soul, he has to ask other questions. And the questions he asks, he says, I'm a man of nonviolence, but we're living in a time of the Vietnam War. And people said, don't talk about that. Don't talk about that. You're going to get in trouble. He talked about it, and you know what happened? A lot of the funding for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference disappeared. And then he said, and he made this point all the time, he said, of course we want to break down segregation. You have the right to go to any school you want to go to.
Yeah.
But then he asked, what does that matter if you don't have the money to go to that school? And that takes him then to the whole issue of income and wealth inequality. He says, how can it be in a country of so much wealth that so many people have so little? And as Senator Turner said, and people forget this, what was he doing in the last months of his life? He was organizing the Poor People's March of African Americans, of poor whites, of Latinos, of Native Americans. He was marching on Washington to say, you cannot forget about us. So what is courageous about him, he never stopped.
Right.
He understood the interconnectedness of everything, and he kept going forward.
Absolutely.
And as Senator Turner said, let's never forget where he was when he was assassinated. He was standing up in a union effort with the union, trying to defend workers who were exploited, low-paid, terrible working conditions. That's where he was killed. And I think that's a message that the corporate media doesn't want us to hear too much about.
No.
That's exactly right. But I think part of our challenge is how do we resist the deodorizing of our dear brother Martin, the Santa Clausification of Martin Luther King Jr., so that he appears harmless. He appears as if he's not a threat. See, when the FBI said he was the most dangerous man in America.
Yes.
They say, J. Edgar Hoover, well, why would you say that? Well, he said that because he was willing to tell the truth about America and then reach out and organize white, black, red, yellow, working people, poor people that constitutes a threat to Wall Street and big corporations, big banks and big corporations. Anytime you have a voice that can bring the masses together in that way, you constitute a major, major threat. And I think what is magnificent about the Sanders campaign is now within the context of electoral politics. We haven't had this since 84 and 88 with Jesse Jackson in any massive way. And yet here we actually didn't have Brother Bernie Sanders, who's coming from the vanilla side of the country, who's sensitive to the chocolate folk in the country,
say that.
And then still willing to confront Wall Street after having spent time in Congress as representative and senator, and of course mayor as well. So it's a very unique moment, and there's a real sense in which it could very well be America's last chance for the legacy of King
That's right.
to be addressed in a serious way. And it's a fascinating thing that be a brother from Brooklyn
Right.
who's leading it.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading and watching some speeches by Fred Hampton, and there were two brothers that came in that were part of another political organization. And they laid out a plan in front of Fred and said, well, here, Fred, here you go. This is what we're going to do. And he read through the papers, and Fred said, well, where's the education? And they were like, well, what are you talking about? We're going to put that in there. He said, no. You don't put that in there. You have to educate the people on the same things that we're educated on first. Mm-hmm. And if you're not educating the people, all you're doing is replacing despots. And he literally started naming black despots. Even Papa Doc, he says, white people, man, they hate, and this is how he talk. White people hate it, man. Papa Doc hated him so bad, he hated this white piece of paper, wouldn't even draw it. But what did he do? He took power, he started pressing people the same way, because people weren't educated. Yeah. I have been educated in the proper thoughts and philosophies of Dr. King, so I know truth, and I know truth when I see it. No other politician is on the other side of that camera telling you that you deserve health care as a right. No one is telling you that you deserve economic opportunity out of this country for a right. No one is telling you to require more of the republic that is the greatest republic on the face of the earth, except this candidate. So I'm saying, I don't care what color he is. I don't care what part of the country he is, who he's from. I know that they killed a man named Martin King, but they did not kill a philosophy.
That's right.
I am about principles and philosophies, and whoever lines up with those, that's who I'm in line with. You could be blue. Yeah. You could be red. You could be brown. You could be any shade of black, because we got them so black we blue. But it matters to me more that you stand in solidarity with this philosophy because you're white, because the most dangerous part of what Dr. King really said in the end was he fears that the white radical in the South is not the problem, but the white moderate who is about order over justice, about the social order of the day. Black boys are 17% unemployment. Yes. Don't worry about that. Let's worry about getting regular unemployment. Okay. Right. But then you start yelling about crime festering. Right. Wherever you underemploy 17% of anybody is going to be crime.
So the problem is it's higher than 17%. That's the problem.
I agree. Those are just the guys reporting.
I want to raise one other issue where Dr. King was extraordinary. Is, and Mike just touched on it, his understanding that change does not take place from on top, but from down below. The people have to be educated, and people have to be organized.
Absolutely.
Jump in. I mean, it's all of the struggles from Birmingham on. Understood that you needed to have a well-educated, politically conscious group of people who are prepared to stand up and fight for justice.
Well, if I can put it in a frame where people can visualize it, when you think about your own house or you think about this building that we're in, the roof is nothing without the foundation.
Absolutely.
And that really is what the grassroots represents. They represent the foundation. And so all great change in this country, to your point, Senator, has come from the grassroots. When I think about the spirit, though, of Dr. King, I think about people like Mother Teresa. She embodies the spirit of Dr. King. Or Mother Jones, who in 1800 was stumping for minors and said that I will fight like hell for the living, but I'm going to pray for the dead, but I'm going to fight like hell for the living. That is the spirit of Dr. King. Even when we talk about sanitizing people, I think about Rosa Parks. Sanitize her to make her seem like this elderly. She was only in her 40s. 40 is the new 30. Thank God Almighty. But to sanitize her, but she was a revolutionary too. She didn't just sit on that seat and say, I'm not moving today. She was organizing in the South when black women were being raped by white men during the Jim Crow era. She was there. E.D. Nixon sent her into the South. She took the report. They organized. She admired Malcolm X, a name that we are not allowed to say his name. Now, we can talk about Dr. King all day long, but don't you say Malcolm X, because now you done went too far. Both of those men and women whose names we know and don't know had a revolutionary spirit that says in the African proverb, I am because we are. And that really is what, Senator, that's really what your campaign is. You are calling on a political revolution. You are reminding Big Mama down the street or Mr. Jones up the street that they have voice. And no matter how the corporate structure, corporate elected officials, because we got to call them out. Malcolm X said it's the difference between the fox and the wolf. And that is what we deal with even in our own, and even in the Democratic Party. But you are reminding people that they have voice. And all of our voices together can make a difference.
One of my great worries is that so many people of all colors giving up on the political process. They think
Yeah,
it doesn't
they
matter.
are.
Why should I go out and vote? You know, I'm unemployed, or I'm making $10 an hour. I can't afford childcare, working longer hours for low. Who's going to listen to me? Anybody in Washington will listen to me? And they understand that the system is rigged and it's corrupt, and they don't vote. And when they don't vote and get involved, a bad situation becomes even worse. So one of the things, I mean, what Dr. King was about is bringing people together. I remember, you know, I date myself by reminding people that I was there in 1963 for that march. And we came in from the University of Chicago. And my God, I mean, there's so many people, all colors. I mean, it was just an extraordinarily moving moment for me in my life. But what King was about and what the establishment feared, imagine what happens. Blacks and whites and Latinos, Native Americans, and working people come together and come up with a radical idea that maybe we should have an economy that works for your kids and all of our kids rather than just a handful of people on Wall Street.
Absolutely.
But Senator, talk about your organizing, though. This is not just about
you were a
just
member
at
of
that
SNCC.
march.
Yeah.
But come on, talk about
Not a
that.
SNCC. I was a member of CORE.
I remember of CORE, okay.
Here's what we did. This was in the early 60s. And we focused on two things. Number one, you know, those of us at the University of Chicago were able to raise some money, not a huge amount of money, to help young people at SNCC, people like John Lewis and the others. All right, so we sent some money down there. They were getting their heads beaten off. And we try to help them to the degree that we could. But what some of us also said, yeah, we got to help our brothers and sisters in the South. But you know what? We got some struggles right here in the North as well. And what was going on at that particular time at the University of Chicago, where I attended, turned out that the university was a major landowner and owned a lot of apartments, which were segregated. So what we did is we sent a black couple in, you know, to say, looking for an apartment. They said, we're looking for, and the landowner said, well, we're really sorry. There's just no apartments available right now. Fine. 2 hours later, we sent the white couple in. And then they said, okay, let me show you. We have apartment over here, an apartment over here, an apartment over here. This was apartments owned by the University of Chicago.
Not Donald Sterling.
The University of Chicago. Okay, and that resulted in one of the first sit-in demonstrations in the North, as I recall. We sat in at the administration building. It got a lot of attention, and it focused, you know, it focused on how a prestigious liberal institution like the University of Chicago was maintaining segregation. The other thing we got involved in was the segregated schools in the city of Chicago. And I remember, you know, I bumped into the Chicago Police Department before 1968, so I had a sense with these guys. As I was tossed into a paddy wagon, head first, I got a clue.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm friends with a lot of brothers and sisters in the nationalist community. There's still a very strong black nationalist community in this country, and they deserve to be recognized because they're working without cameras. They're working with no major media outlets. Your campaign, to me, speaks directly to some of the things that they're fighting. In particular, an unjust justice system that perpetually locks black men up at 4 or 5 times the rate of
you got
people. The inability to find jobs. You're white, and we have been taught for the last 51 years, since they saw the potential of people to come together, to compartmentalize. Right. If I'm black, that's your thing. Today I put up a picture of Leonard Peltier. If you're Native American, that's your thing. If you're a white woman, that's your thing. And everybody do their thing and nobody ever get together. Right. I just like for brothers and sisters to know out there that no war is won without allies.
Come on.
America wouldn't be here if France wouldn't have gave some help.
Yeah. That's right.
We would have certainly fell victim. It's impossible to totally get what we deserve and what we want if we do not make smart political alliances. Right. And I think that there's a large segment of our community that's going with the Democratic flow, that's making the Democratic alliances with people that just want things to stay in order.
That's right.
I like you because you're willing to shake things up. I like you because I saw you sit in a room full of grassroots organized in Chicago and not break a sweat and answer hard and difficult questions.
That's right.
You know, hard. I mean, those kids didn't let up on you. They asked you about everything from your thoughts about Israel to your thoughts about incarceration. One girl said, I don't believe there should be any police.
Right.
And I was
reparations.
I don't know if
right now, can you let us know what date?
And that was 2 days before Christmas.
Yeah. Like I got
for Christmas right there. Come
I
on.
was.
He was strong.
I was impressed by
He was
your
strong.
will to stay honest, and this is what I walked away with. He never says I as much as he says we. He said that to every person in the room. I can't do this, but we can.
Mike, thanks for making that point. That is the most important point. Look, what I've said over and over again, you know this, you're in politics. You know, Dr. West, you know this.
Mm-hmm.
Given the structure of American society today, if I were elected president tomorrow, do you think that one person can take on Wall Street, corporate America, the big campaign donors, the corporate media, which chooses to put what it will put on television? You got one person? You can't do it. And what Dr. King is about is the understanding that bringing people together at the grassroots movement to give the establishment an offer they cannot refuse, so to speak.
That's right.
That's the only way that we bring about change.